So Nehemiah becomes a solution. God is looking. Somewhere in the Old Testament, I believe it could be Isaiah or Jeremiah, says, I looked for a man. I searched for a man, God says, to stand in the gap. The sad thing is that he said, but I could find none. Nehemiah is going to be that one that's going to be the first what would you the first beam in the bridge. I want you to realize this, that it's not just Nehemiah. It's not just one guy. It's a lot of God's people coming together, but Nehemiah is going to be that first beam in the bridge to bridge the gap. There's a gap between a loving God and a sinful humanity. And God was looking for, that's where he sent his only begotten son to be that bridge. But Nehemiah is going to be that bridge to help bring a solution to the great distress and reproach that is in Jerusalem. The wall is torn down. The enemy has access. The enemy can just come in and go whenever he wants to. The defenses are not there. And you wait till we get into the third chapter and we start looking at the portions of the wall and especially the gates that are along the wall. Very important. There'll be some great lessons there. But my point right now is that Nehemiah jumps in. I mean, both feet. He's not just sticking a toe in there. He's jumping in. He's praying. He's fasting. He's crying out to God, not for himself, but for a people. His brothers and sisters, people he's never known, about a place he's never been to. But it's a place that lives in his heart. And he wants to be the solution. He wants to be, and here I am, the first solution, just a part of the solution. There's a people, a great assembly of people that will be the solution. But Nehemiah is the guy who's going to start the whole thing, and he's starting off with his prayer. Please let your ear be attentive, verse 6, your eyes open that you may hear the prayer of your servant, which I pray before you now, day and night. For the children of Israel, your servants, and confess. He says, I'm praying for the children of Israel, your servants. Don't forget, these are your servants. Don't forget, it's the priesthood, it's the Levites, it's the 12 tribes, your servants. And confess the sins of the children of Israel, which we have sinned against you, both my father's house and I have sinned. You know, the sin of Israel was great. And it wasn't just that they smoked cigarettes and chewed tobacco, and spit it out on the sidewalk. You say, oh my God, how terrible people. No, they had gone into spiritual prostitution. They had allowed these titans, these false gods. You need to be listening to Mr. Missler and what he's talking about on the 6th chapter of Genesis. Oh my God, it'll open up talk about opening up some eyes and some ears. We need to have that understanding, that knowledge. And he's bringing out other viewpoints along the way when it comes down to the 6th chapter of Genesis. He's not just saying this is what it is. He's saying, okay, here's what other people say about it. You make your own decision, But he's letting you know what his viewpoint is when it comes down to the days of Noah. Anyway, he says, we're praying, man. We're praying. We're praying because we have sinned. Both my father's house, you say, oh yeah, your father's house has sinned. Heck yeah. Those guys, that's why they went to Babylon to begin with, because they've sinned. They forsook the God that had made covenant with them, the God who had brought them out of Egypt. They forsook him, and they went after the local gods of the Amorites and the Moabites and the Edomites and the Amalekites. And it just kept on going over and over and over again. Both my father's house and I have sinned. Oh, wow. You too? We have acted very corruptly against you. See, he's identifying himself with the sin of the people. I mean, the sin is what got them to Babylon. The 70 years is over. They're going back to the land. But there's still problems over there. If you were with us in the book of Nehemiah, I mean, Ezra, you remember, old Ezra is freaking out because he finds out that they're still doing the same thing that got him pulled out of the land. You know, it's just like a guy getting out of jail and he goes right straight back to what he was doing to get him there in jail to begin with. We have acted very corruptly against you, have not kept the commandments, the statutes, nor the ordinance which you commanded your servant Moses. Remember, I pray, the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. Okay, they were unfaithful. And you know, it wasn't just an action. It wasn't just, oh, they stopped. No, they brought in false gods. God was married to these people. God had created covenant. He had brought them in and he had instituted covenant with these people. They were covenant breakers, and God is still keeping his covenant with them, even though they have broken covenant with him. But he's getting their attention, okay, again. Remember, I pray, the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you amongst the nations. But if you return to me, oh my God, repentance, a U-turn. If you return to me and keep my commandments and do them, though some of you were cast out to the farthest part of the heavens, yet I will gather them from there. So, you know, Nehemiah is praying, he's fasting, he's crying out to his God, he's understanding why, but he's also understanding that there is a promise. There's a great promise that is out there. The promise is, oh my God, if we return to you and keep your commandments and do them, doesn't matter where we are, you're going to bring us back. That's the promise. That's a man who knows the word of the Lord. That's a man who knows the character of God. The character of God that has been revealed through the scriptures. Not just I think or I hope he's like this. No, one who understands has a mature understanding of who God is that we find in the scriptures. That's why, you know, the scriptures are there for us so we can understand history, his story. Remember, I pray, the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying, if you're unfaithful, I will scatter you. But if you return to me, I will gather you from wherever you're at, no matter how far away you are. It doesn't matter what continent you are. It doesn't matter what side of the equator you're on. It doesn't matter even if you're at North or South Pole. It doesn't matter. He says, I will bring you back. If you come back to me, I will bring you back into the land. If you return to me, you know, does God forget his commandments? Does God forget his promises? Of course he doesn't. But when you can find the right promise for the situation that you're in, and you can take it to God and say, God, I know this is where I'm at. I know this is what I've done, but here's your promise. And I bring your promise, and I bring a brokenness in my heart. I've come back. I've made the 180. I've made the U-turn. I have repented. Because that's what repentance is all about. It's a U-turn. I was going one way. I see it as going down the steps into a dark basement. That is where I was headed. But I heard the voice of God, and I came out. And I came out with a promise. See, when I came out originally with a promise, it was the promise of John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believed in him would not perish but have everlasting life. So I came to him with the promise of John 3:16, and he was faithful. And every time I find myself in the pit, I come up with a promise and I say, God, I'm sorry, okay? Here's your promise. And God is faithful. And that's what he's doing. We were unfaithful. God is faithful.